So our guest tonight is Jim Wright. He's going to be talking to us about the Celery Farm Natural Area. Some of you might know that he's the author of a book called The Real James Bond, which is a biography of the author and Birdman who fell prey to the world's most famous case of identity theft. Some of you know that story. The Wall Street Journal called it slim and elegant, so we want to hear about that sometime, maybe a program this fall, Jim. Like Bond himself, slim and elegant. So yeah, get that hardcover ebook or audiobook. So Jim is a prize-winning journalist, photographer. He's written a lot of illustrated books, Central America's largest rainforest, and Hawk Mountain, which is cool. That's where I did my internship starting out, as well as the New Jersey Meadowlands. So nature photographer, he's a blogger. He writes the Birdwatcher column for The Record in North Jersey. And he lives with his wife, Patty, in Ellendale, where he's a deputy marsh warden. So he knows a lot about Celery Farm. His next book coming out from Timber Press is The Screech Owl Companion. So that sounds great. Looking forward to that. Welcome, Jim. Glad you're here with us.
Great. Well, good to be here. And thanks, everyone, for coming. And I want to thank Ann for hosting this. So I have done quite a few books. The one about the Celery Farm, you might be able to get out of your library. It's called In the Presence of Nature and gives a great history of the Celery Farm, which is about a 107-acre nature preserve in Allendale, New Jersey. And I also wrote a children's book called Duck Enough to Fly, and it has pictures of wood ducklings jumping out of the box. Quite an exciting moment when I witnessed that. I do a blog called The Celery Farm and Beyond. I've written the Bird Watcher column for over a decade, and it really keeps me active and on top of things. And I am a marsh warden at the Celery Farm, which means I try to keep people from walking their dogs and pick up trash, basically. But it is a nice job, and someone's got to do it. That is a view from the north end of the Celery Farm. It's basically, I think I have a map here. I want to mention it's only less than an hour from you guys. Just type in the Celery Farm Natural Area on Google Maps and up it'll pop. So the Celery Farm is about 107 acres, and there is a fairly large pond called Lake Appert, and you can do a loop around the lake just staying on the trail, and it's about a mile. It's flat, nice wide trails, but there are a lot of tree roots and stuff, so you have to watch your step. But that's a nice shot at dawn, and I love the quote from Frederick Law Olmsted, who wrote, "The witness of the eye alone would persuade us that nature had achieved the whole result. And that's the way I feel about the Celery Farm. A lot of work goes on by some terrific volunteers, and no one knows all the work behind the scenes. I'm sure it's probably the same with your places as well. Here's a map. You can see where to park and things, and that's Lake Appert, and you can see the trail going around there. And you can download that also from the Fike Nature Association website. Always good to take a look at that before you go. This shot was taken a while back, and this is what it'll look like in a few weeks, late April, early May. We don't have grass on the trails anymore. It's really gotten to be fairly popular, especially since the COVID mess. So a lot of people come here for their refuge. This is my favorite view of Canada geese because they're leaving. We have a lot of Canada geese here. I call them Satan's minions, but I know a lot of people enjoy them. Also, we have some great blue herons also. And you guys are coming to a great part of the year, as you know, everywhere. And the Celery Farm right around early May is terrific. You have all kinds of little critters around, and have a nice butterfly garden. And here's some of the pictures my friend Jerry took for the book. And these were all in one day. Had a bee hummingbird there. I'm sorry. I've been doing a lot of Cuban talks. That is a hummingbird clearwing moth, I believe. Sorry about that. And of course, the fritillary on top. So a little history about the Celery Farm. There was a founding father named John Fell, who was in the Continental Congress, and he was called the Great Tory Hunter. And he owned a house across the street from the Celery Farm. And that part of his estate was called Fells Meadow. And it was basically a swampy area. And it eventually was purchased by this guy named Zabriskie, who was very good at mining peat. And so Lake Appert is actually from an old peat bog, dried it out, and now we have a nice lake there. And it became a celery farm. That's why it's called the natural area. And this is where the lake is today. They would drain the lake every summer and raise celery and onions there. And this is one of the farmers, found his old license there. He had cost him $5 a year for the Farm Bureau, and it included insurance. This is an aerial view of the celery farm back in the 1950s when it was a celery farm. And if you study it, you can see how rural it was in those days. If you look to the north of the celery farm, where all the fields are, you can just see forests. And there's a very main road called Route 17 up there as well. And actually had some barns where they grew the celery. And this was torn down about 20 years ago, I guess, just when I moved in. And this is where the butterfly garden is now. They actually had a cow there and a tractor. So here's a more recent shot that I took from an airplane. And you can see to the north where all those forests were. It's now an industrial park. There's condos there. It's really changed in character from rural to, I'd say, fairly heaven suburban. But the great thing is when you get to the celery farm, you feel like you're back in the middle of nowhere. If your ears can filter out the traffic from Route 17, it really is a great escape. And like I said, it's only an hour away from you guys. I wanted to show you some pictures of some of the birds we'll be getting in the next few weeks. And I just love this picture and the sign that says no fishing, which is a great joke for us birders. And these are some of the pictures from my friend Jerry. The ospreys are back now. My house backs up onto the celery farm, and I can look out my window and actually see the ospreys flying in. And here he is catching, I think he missed and got a piece of wood instead, but he worked pretty hard for that. We do have a resident mink and a couple minks these days, and we say they're the only live minks in Allendale. It's a somewhat upscale area. And here's some nice shots of the same mink. Just an awesome guy. We have a thing called the Hour on the Tower every Saturday morning from the Warden's Watch, and we see how many birds we can see in an hour, how many species. And I think the record is about 42, but every once in a while, the mink will show up. And we have a lot of great photographers, and they'll be taking pictures of the mink while other people are counting birds. So a pretty nice way to spend a Sunday morning. Of course, the green heron, kingfisher should be back soon. We do get cormorants there. This is a shot that upsets a lot of people. It's a picture, we're doing a walk and we saw a frog drown a gosling, a Canada goose gosling. And I show this picture to people and they get really upset. And I try to mention to them, well, you see a lot of pictures of great blue herons eating frogs, and no one has any problem with that. But heaven forbid a frog should eat a bird, then it's like, oh, you can't have that. So I like to show that picture just to give you a little different perspective on things. So the celery farm is 107 acres, and it's not going to get much bigger. Pretty much all the open space in our region is spoken for. This is one of the smaller ponds called Fairs Pond, and on a nice spring day, it looks like this. And of course, you have these wonderful sunrises there. And every once in a while, I'll get up in time and see the sun coming up like this, and I go running out in my pajamas with my camera to try to get a picture. We do have swans there, and they tend to mind their own business, and we have enough snapping turtles to keep the population down. We do get some amazing birds. I guess you guys know the prothonotary warbler. We got a cerulean a while back. We have a lot of tree swallows, and the original marsh warden came up with this idea of using PVC pipes instead of the traditional wooden boxes. And it works very well. The house sparrows don't like these things, and the tree swallows love them. So they're low maintenance and quite popular. So this is a shot of the wood ducks on top of the box. We have about 6 of them there. And it's always a treat in the winter to empty the box and find how many wood duck eggs have not hatched yet. I like this shot. It's from 20 years ago, and it shows you how things change in that amount of time. That is all purple loosestrife in the back, and that was really invasive and was taking over the lake. And we brought in some beetles, some beneficial bugs from Europe, and they removed all of the loosestrife. And it's really a great experiment, and the state of New Jersey has a great program. But when we took this picture, we were all excited because there was a deer. And then we got this picture of the buck, and like, this is so great. We have a picture of a deer in the celery farm. I'm sorry to say that deer have taken over much of the celery farm. We did an aerial survey, infrared count of deer. I think there are, 3 years ago, just as COVID hit, we had 70 deer on 107 acres. And I think the low limit should be 2 or 3. So a lot of the great native plants have been eaten. One of my favorites, of course, is jewelweed. And we still have some of it, but the deer have really done a tune on that. To counteract some of this, the Fike Nature Association has put up a deer exclosure, and so far it has worked pretty well. We're getting native plants growing in there, and we actually had a screech owl moved into one of the holes for a little while, and then pileated woodpeckers nested in that same tree hole a couple years back. And this was just as COVID hit, and they were inside the exclosure, and we called it a photographer exclosure. It gave the birds a little chance, some breathing room, especially when the young were on the ground, and it just kept people away from them, and it worked out pretty well. And to have pileated woodpeckers basically in your backyard is pretty cool. This is a shot just after the exclosure went up, and there's a deer going, "What the heck is going on here?" So the latest stars of the show I mentioned are the pileated woodpeckers. They come and go, but they're there fairly often. And this is a sign I wish every natural area had. It's from Mount Desert Island, and it says, "This is a place for quiet enjoyment. Please stay on the paths whenever possible. Keep children in hand. No bicycles, picnicking, sunbathing, or whatever that last thing is. Thank you." So I'd like to set the tone more at the celery farm. People are starting to use it more and more as a park. They're talking on their cell phones. I think you probably have that problem as well. If you have a way to combat that, I would love to hear your suggestions. I'm going to end on a little sad note. This is a campaign of mine. Rat poison bait stations. I know this is a big switch, but my favorite hawk is a red-shouldered hawk, and I monitor a nest for the state. And just before I came on tonight, a red-shouldered hawk was found dead in the celery farm near a office park where there are probably 40 of these rat poison bait stations. And I've gotten the town to at least not have any on their property, but we need a state law to ban these rat poisons. This is what they look like. They're these black boxes, like large shoe boxes. If you go to office parks or go into downtown areas, a lot of places, you will be amazed at how many of these rat poison bait stations there are. The trouble is, they're designed to kill rats slowly, and it takes a couple days for the rats to die. And while they're dying, raptors will eat the rats and then die of the poisoning themselves. And I've lost count of how many raptors I've found dead in Allendale. Great horned owls, a lot of Cooper's hawks, now probably a red-shouldered as well. And the people who have these rat poison bait stations really don't take care of them. I found this one, it was wide open with the rat poison sticking out. So, when you're in your town, just keep an eye out for this stuff, and whatever you can do to raise awareness, I really would appreciate it. A lot of these are labeled, but some do not have any labels. You don't know what poison a pet is eaten, or even the raptor is eaten. And they were designed to be used for short times, and I've seen them up for 10 years now. So it's really a nasty thing. And one thing we've done is crack down on all the open dumpsters in town. And I would urge you, Board of Health will tell these companies they cannot have open dumpsters like that. You can see what a haven it is for rats. So they're poisoning the rats and having a free buffet for them at the same time. California has banned these. Massachusetts is considering it, and so have European nations. And so we passed that resolution urging businesses to stop using these rodenticides. I'm not sure how well it's worked. This is a young red-shouldered from the nest that I monitor. He actually had fallen out of the nest, and we brought him to the Raptor Trust in New Jersey. They nursed him back to health and released him down there in Millington, New Jersey. So I thought I'd end on a happy note. This is the Celery Farm at Sunset. And thanks for watching. Happy to answer some questions. I do sell my book, The Real James Bond, and you can email me at wrightjamesb@gmail.com. It's a really well illustrated and a lot of fun. And I thought I'd give you a little preview of the cover of my next book, hopefully coming out in the fall from Timber Press. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen if I can. And if anyone has questions, I would be happy to answer them.